Well, winter's here at AG Paintball in New Hampshire. There's no use denying that. If you happen to be a paintball player watching this video in, say, Arizona or Florida or San Diego or Texas, and you're thinking, damn, it's almost down to 75 degrees outside, that's just too cold to ball. Well, buckle up, because here in New England we do two things well. One, we play paintball in the snow, and two, we win Super Bowls. As a paintball player in the northern US, you don't have to pack up all your equipment and call it a season. You can keep comfortably playing in this kind of weather with just a little extra work, and in this video, we're going to try to help you do just that. Alright, so probably the first problem with playing paintball in cold weather is how much more brittle and fragile the paintballs get, which leads to a lot higher amount of paint broken inside of your gun. So let's talk about how to reduce that. We can never entirely eliminate it, but let's try to reduce it. Step one might be looking for a winter shell ball. So the paint manufacturers are aware of this, of course, and they will make paint with a little bit thicker shell and a little bit higher PEG content, which is polyethylene glycol. So you can check your local store or field and see if they have the winter type ball available. Another tip, another very important tip, is doing a good job sizing your paint to barrel. Not everybody has a barrel kit, but I recommend it for all playing conditions. And in cold weather, when your paint breakage gets to be a bigger issue, I definitely recommend it. So by doing a better job fitting your paint to barrel, using a barrel kit, really any barrel kit, you're going to help reduce paint breakage. If anything, I would slightly overbore, which means it's going to be a little bit loose, which means you're going to lose a little bit of air efficiency, but I think that's a fair trade-off for breaking less paint. Another very small tip is don't underpack your pods, and that is to say leaving big spaces. This is an exaggeration, but by leaving big spaces and you're running around out there in the woods, you're more likely to break paint inside of your pod. Once you break paint inside your pod, you dump it in your hopper, and now your entire gun is full of broken paint. So those are a couple things you can do to reduce paint breakage issues. Okay, well, let's talk about something that's really not an issue, and that is the extra pain of playing in winter. It's a really common refrain to listen to players, especially newer players, tell each other that it hurts so much more to play in the winter, and I think it's really not true. If anything, it's the opposite. It actually tends to hurt less. So why? Number one, the number one obvious reason is you're going to have more clothing on. You're just going to have an extra sweatshirt on, an extra layer, and you're just going to have a lot more cushioning for each paintball that's going to hit you. So that's number one. Number two, the myth of frozen paintballs is just that. It's a myth. We've covered it in another video. I'll probably link it in the description. It's not a thing. Dear God, it's not a thing. So for those two reasons, extra pain of playing paintball in the winter is just not really a thing to be worried about. So put that fear aside, coming out and play. All right, another hassle you can deal with while playing paintball in cold weather is fogging of your goggles. So you fog because the hot and humid air trapped near your face and between your goggles comes into contact with the colder lens, and the moisture drops out of the air, turns into condensate, fogs up the inside of your goggles. So how can you prevent that? Well, number one is make sure that you're using a 2-pane thermal lens, right? Not a single pane lens. Another thing you can do to help is take your goggle completely off your head in between games and set it down. You'll see a lot of players keep their goggles perched on their head in between games. That's not a great idea because you've still got heat and humidity coming off of there. Another thing you can do is simply wipe any sweat you have off your face in between games. That will certainly help. And the other thing you can do is don't block the air vents on your goggles with hoodies. So your paintball goggles will have vents in here to help with that exchange of air. And dry winter air is great for cleaning out moisture. But if you block that with your hoodie, then you're going to be trapping even more fog inside of this, and you're going to have more fogging. All right, the next subject that you need to spend a little bit of extra time paying attention to during cold weather play is your gun itself. So it needs a little bit of extra attention to detail to keep these things running best in cold weather. Cold weather does make it a little bit more difficult for the guns to function properly. So if you have a fully mechanical type paintball gun, like say a Tippmann or a Spider, something of that nature, take it apart, keep it extra clean, and make sure you keep it lubricated. And you're doing that to reduce the friction the system needs to overcome in order to cycle. If you have an electro-pneumatic type marker, then same advice. You want to keep it a little bit extra clean than you normally would, and make sure you're either greasing it or oiling it, depending on what kind of marker you have. Make sure you're changing your batteries more often than you probably would in warm weather. The other thing is, if you do that and you're still struggling a little bit, you might want to cheat and turn up your dwell a little bit. Your dwell is what controls the solenoid inside of these paintball guns. Solenoid is what controls the air pressure moving the internals back and forth. And by turning the dwell up a little bit above factory, you can kind of overcome difficulties that it's having in weather. I wouldn't make that your default fix for any problems. Do your basics first, but even some manufacturers will recommend turning up your dwell a little bit during winter play.